I am Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Susie.
And we're paranormal specialists who live in the most haunted city on earth, Savannah, Georgia. Every day is Halloween in our line of work, so join us as we spin true tales of haunts, murders, and disturbing Savannah history. I'm Madison.
I'm Chris.
And welcome to the most haunted city on earth. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of The Most Haunted City on Earth. My name is Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Susie.
And I'm JT Timmons.
Yes, and we are back with our season finale.
Woo, season 4 finale. Wow. It's been over a year, y'all.
Ooh. That's insane.
We squeezed 4 seasons in a single year. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
We got a lot to say.
I mean,
we have a lot to say.
That's about right.
We like to
4
talk.
4 seasons a year for podcast. But
Is
yeah,
it?
we do like to talk and nah.
You got me.
So yeah, season 5 is gonna be wicked cool. We got a lot of great stuff planned. It's gonna be very, very enjoyable.
Very enjoyable.
Yes.
Well, today for our season finale, we have a ghost mail.
You've got Ghostmail.
Woo!
Boogity, 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 boogity.
Ooh, ghost mail.
Yes.
Boogity, boogity.
So real fast, before we start the ghost mail, let's thank the
Yep.
Parajunkies.
Let me pull them up. All right. So we want to thank Amanda French, Ashley Meyerskow. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. I'm sorry, Ashley, if I didn't. Alana Crabb, Lexi, Alexis Heiss, Stephanie Lynn, Alyssa Hill, Naomi Beckerick, Jamie Campbell, Shannon Smith, Emmy Graffius, Laura Swink, and Michaela Gowins. Thank you guys so much for joining us over on the dock side.
Welcome aboard.
You now have 0 ads.
You have 0 ads.
You'll never have to hear an ad ever.
And
Promise.
you get to see weird things that we post all the time.
Yes,
It's true.
We post random junk every single day on Patreon. So if you are not a Parajunkie, you should definitely
You're missing out.
Yeah, you definitely need to become a Parajunkie. It also supports us and keeps us doing what we're doing. We have this fancy live stream set up because of the Parajunkies, where I'm able to like switch between a whole bunch of cameras. It's so cool. So definitely become a Parajunkie, support us, and we'll keep growing, keep advancing.
We will.
That's literally what we do. We just reinvest everything. So anyway, all right, and let's go ahead and jump into the ghost mail. Actually, before we jump into the ghost mail, let's tell everybody what we have done today. We did a birthday episode, but before that, let's just talk quickly about.
We've had a day.
Yes, we have had a day. We have had a day.
Well,
so
first,
yes,
we woke up super early in the morning. JT and I got coffee. They did not have nitro. JT was very upset about that.
Very.
And
We're really going through it.
oh yeah, we're going through our day. And then we arrived at the studio. JT had to lug a ton of equipment into our truck. Then
Yep.
Chris arrived. We rolled over to the Pinpoint Heritage Museum, as you can see on Chris's shirt. It was so hot.
I sweat through my clothes and had to buy a shirt.
It was sweltering outside.
sweltering.
And JT's pouring buckets of sweat
Oh my gosh.
trying to film this place, which is beautiful. So at least you were in a pretty location to pour sweat. But the Pinpoint Heritage Museum is basically a museum that highlights the history and the current culture of the Gullah Geechee people on Pinpoint. There is a few different islands that surround Pinpoint and are here in Savannah's region, if you will. But Pinpoint is the only community of Gullah Geechee people that are direct descendants that are currently living in a community together in the traditional way.
So cool.
So it's super cool and absolutely gorgeous. The land, the reason why they were there to begin with was because the land was considered undesirable, which it baffles me because it is so stunning. Just perfect low country if you're into that type of vibe. But yeah, so look forward to that episode. That's going to be in collaboration with Visit Savannah, and it's going to go up on their social media and all that. So it's going to be pretty cool.
Definitely give Visit Savannah a follow on Facebook and go subscribe to them on YouTube because they're going to be dropping the pilot. And then if the pilot gets picked up, which we do believe it will because it's going to be fire.
Fire.
Yes. Full confidence in that. Then we're going to be making more.
Yep.
And it's going to be super fun. We're going to go on location to these places and super haunted places and just talk about Savannah and, you know, because it's so amazing here.
So we need your support definitely to push that, to show Visit Savannah that this is worth something to pursue.
Yes.
Because your interest is definitely the most important thing.
It is.
When it comes to, because we can make things all day long, but if nobody's watching them, then it doesn't really matter,
right?
You know? So anywho.
So we got Ghostmail.
We do have
all right,
Ghostmail.
let's read it up.
Our mailbox is full.
Bang, bang.
All right.
Oh,
also,
and sending Ghostmail to,
yes.
Yeah, tell them where to send in Ghostmail, Madison.
Yes, if you have a ghost story that you would like to share with us, send it to ghostmail@hauntedcitypodcast.com. We really like reading your ghost mail stories,
Yeah,
and we
they're
would love to have more for next season because people do seem to be enjoying this segment. So send us your ghost stories, people. All right. Let us start out with Ghost Mail, My Shadow Friend, from Maria Cruz. All right. Hi there. My name is Maria, and I've been listening to your podcast for some time now. I really enjoy your show, and I feel as though I learn a lot. It has helped me make sense of some of my own experiences, as well as wonder why I've never seen the Hat Man. Don't wish the Hat Man upon yourself. You're fine. Honestly, don't even worry about it. I've been debating on which story to share first with you guys, as I have tons to share. Please send them all. I have chosen to tell you an experience that has made me even more curious as to why spirits always seem to cling to me. With as much as I have experienced, I can't help but wonder why me. To give a little backstory on myself, I have seen spirits since I was around 5 years old. I am 27 now, and I have been able to see and hear spirits and feel energies, and this weird thing of hearing them in my head. That's not as weird as you think. So people think when you have clairaudience that it's always you're hearing a voice outside of your body. But I will tell you, because I also do have clairaudience, and most of the time it is voices that come through in your mind. A lot of times it's like every spirit kind of has their own distinct voice, I find. So, you know, like that's how you differentiate. So that's not as uncommon as you would believe. It's just not talked about as much with clairaudience.
Yeah, when you hear a foreign voice in your head, there's a point at which you're like, am I making that up? Or is it something separate? You know, because like I have recall of people who've spoken to me in the past, and so there's certain thoughts that just sound like, you know, my mom or, you know, my teacher or something like that. But every now and then, like at the Savannah Theater, I had an experience where a voice very clearly not my own or one of my making was definitely in my head. It wasn't whispering to me. It was in my head. Yeah.
It happens, you know, and definitely an interesting thing to pursue maybe for a different episode is the not so much talked about things when it comes to the clair abilities, because there's a lot that goes into them. But anywho, so this weird thing of hearing them in my head, it's almost like they tell me information such as their names and show me what they look like outside of their shadowy self. I don't know how else to explain that other than I just know things. Now, let's begin our journey. It's a long one, but I would love to hear y'all's feedback. In 2019, my boyfriend at the time and I had chosen to move out of my parents' house and into a place of our own. We had found a house for rent that he wanted to check out, but I said no due to the area it was in. A few weeks go by and we continue searching. This house keeps coming back up. Eventually, I cave and agree to rent that one. I have driven by this house probably a dozen times while commuting around the town we live in. It was a small single-story house with a crappy porch but a great yard for our dogs. We set an appointment for a tour of the place and signed the necessary paperwork. Keep in mind, I have never been inside this house, and the original posting only had a photo of the outside of the house and the yard. A few nights before our appointment, I started having dreams about the house. In the dreams, I would walk through the house, and every time I would turn into the bathroom, in one of the bathroom doorways, I would see a man hanging from the door frame. That's horrifying. He was an older man with light hair and tan skin. He was a taller man, so his boots were dragging the floor as if he were too tall to have hung himself easily. This dream repeated itself every night until the day of our appointment. When we finally walked into the house, I was shocked. The house looked identical to how it had been in my dreams. The energy in the house was off. That's the only way I can explain it. It was as if I was being watched the entire time I was in there. My boyfriend at the time was oblivious to this feeling, and well, as they say, curiosity killed the cat. So I obviously went through with renting. The first few months, everything was very calm. I constantly felt watched, but I never saw or heard anything. My things would get moved around the house and cabinets would open themselves, but it was never really anything to be alarmed about. The dreams had stopped, but they would eventually return and be absolutely bizarre. The energy of the house and the presences there would take a dramatic shift in the course of a day. My boyfriend and I had a pretty rough relationship. We argued a lot, and he was very abusive in a verbal, emotional, and mental type of way. I also felt as though I made him nervous. He was a closeted Christian at the time, and I was very open about my beliefs, which were more on the pagan side. However, I do have a strong fascination with Lucifer and other beings such as Baphomet. I look forward to sharing my stories in relation to them at a later date. I would love to hear those, actually. He would listen to me speak about the spirits I would see along with the dreams I had had, and I'm pretty confident that he thought it was a negative gift to have. Every time I would bring up the topic, I just got told it was either because I worshiped the devil or that I was probably schizophrenic. I've been there. I feel you. I feel you on that one. But one afternoon, we were in our bedroom and he was screaming at me. I don't recall what he was yelling at me about, but I do remember crying. He stormed out of the house and didn't return until a few hours later. During his absence, I continued crying, but eventually pulled myself together and began cleaning the house. I don't know why, but cleaning helps me relax. Our house was not an open concept, so there was a doorway between the living room, dining room, and kitchen. While I was cleaning in the kitchen, I kept feeling as though someone was behind me. I never caught a glimpse of what it was, but it was a very eerie feeling. I finished cleaning and went to sit on the couch. As I was scrolling through my phone, I kept hearing, "Look up," over and over in my head. Of course, instead of ignoring this, I looked up to see a black figure peeking in the doorway. It was solid black with longer pointed-like fingers that wrapped around the door frame. I was frozen to the couch. I got this weird feeling that this had been the being that was watching me. I heard the key in the lock on the front door and it turned to look. As my boyfriend walked in the house, I immediately turned my head back to the doorway and the figure was gone. As my boyfriend shut the door, he jumped back and started yelling about bugs being everywhere. I rushed over and looked and noticed that there weren't any bugs there. For lack of wanting to argue, I said I would take care of it and he could go do whatever it was he was going to do. This happened multiple times over the course of the night, and I would continue to see my long-fingered shadow man in the doorways. We settled down in the living room to watch a scary movie, appropriate after you have a really freaky encounter. And I noticed my new friend hanging in the doorway. It was oddly comforting to know that he was there. To my surprise, my boyfriend ended up looking up and seeing him in the doorway. I acted like I knew nothing and asked what he saw. He described the being as tall and dark with longer fingers and a creepy grin. At this point in time, I hadn't even seen the grin. I told him it was probably fine, and we finished the movie and went to bed. My boyfriend was in and out of bed all night, and I kept hearing loud banging. I minded my business, again from lack of wanting to argue. The following morning, I woke up, and he was sitting up in bed staring at me like he'd seen a ghost.
Lord.
He said there was a giant spider above my head, but there was no spider. He then told me that he was up all night because there were bugs all over his body. Every time he tried to lay down, and that when he was able to lay down, something would pull his ankles. So the loud banging I mentioned was him freaking out, trying to get imaginary bugs off of him. This went on for days. It was the same routine for him every night. He would get so mad at me for not seeing the bugs he was talking about that he would shout at me. This would escalate to him shaking me and asking if I was lying to him. Our bedroom had 2 doorways, one in the bathroom I mentioned from my dreams and one in the dining room. I sat up in bed one night and noticed my shadow man friend standing in the dining room behind my boyfriend as he was panicking over bugs. I had assumed that he was probably the cause of my boyfriend's distress. But again, I minded my business. A part of me felt as though he deserved a little torment for how he treated me. My boyfriend asked me to come in outside the house one morning to talk to him. He had told me that he needed to do something about the bug situation. He was now under the impression that my demons were doing things to him. I told him that since it started the night he screamed at me, that maybe he could try apologizing to me in the house. We went into the bedroom and he loudly apologized and I accepted. To my surprise, the bug activity stopped that night, which made him even more convinced that this was my fault and that my demons hated him. I really believe this is where the real downfall of our relationship started. I mean, come on, guys. How do you recover from thinking your partner has demons doing her dirty work? I mean, wow, yeah. Makes sense. I continued to experience things in the house for the rest of the time I was there. My shadow friends stuck around and continued to follow me throughout the house. There was a little girl spirit that would say bless you if you sneezed, and a few other spirits that seemed to just be wandering through. I eventually broke up with him and was in the process of moving out when I saw what I believed to be my shadow friend's true self. I was using the bathroom and I heard that same look up in my head as if in the beginning. I looked up to see my tall shadow friend, but he was different this time. He was standing there and seemed to be a tattered robe or maybe a trench coat. His clothing was not clear as himself. His hands were still the same long black fingers, but his face was different. His face had red markings. I don't think they really meant anything. The space behind the red was still black. It was kind of similar to the red and black creature from the first Insidious movie. That was exactly what I pictured.
Thought of.
He looked at me with a shocked facial expression, which made me feel as though he didn't expect me to see his full self. And then he gave me a huge grin full of pointed teeth, waved, and was gone. I moved out a few days later, but it was not my last time being there. When I would come by to let the dogs out while he was working, I would feel spiritual presences there, but I never saw my shadowy friend again. My question for you guys is, assuming the spirit was on my side, why did it behave that way? I feel as though I grew close with my shadow friend. I would ramble to him when I was home alone about my day, and I would talk to him when I was upset. It was comforting to feel like I finally had someone in my corner. I can't wait to share more experiences with you guys and to hear your opinions. Always keep it spooky, Maria Cruz.
Wow.
So, first off, phenomenal story.
Great story.
Yeah. Excellent.
An excellent ghost story. But second, I'm not surprised to hear that you work with darker entities in the more traditional scheme of things, when you work with Lucifer and Baphomet and all that. A lot of times other spirits come with them. Like when you work with Lilith, a lot of times there's other entities as well that come through. So it's not uncommon to experience that. But what it could have been is, it sounds to me like this entity was sent specifically to get you out of this situation, and that house was the way to go about it. And the reason why I particularly feel like Lucifer might have a little bit of something to do with this is the bugs.
Right.
That is a classic indicator of Lucifer.
Before history is written, it's played. Before it's frozen in time, it's fought one shift at a time. Before it's etched in silver, it's carved in ice. What happens next will last forever. The Stanley Cup Final on ABC and ESPN Plus begins Saturday.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Kroger worth it every time. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Really?
Yeah.
Bugs?
Bugs.
What kind of bugs? Like roaches?
Flies, like black flies a lot of times.
if it's Lucifer, I'd think mosquitoes.
No.
Oh, okay.
A lot of times.
So it's pestilence.
Yeah.
The concept of putrescence, and so
maggots.
it's the bugs that come to the decay. So maggots, flies being probably
Lord of the Flies.
one of the big Lord
okay.
of the Flies,
Right.
absolutely. But roaches are often seen. Also, a chief symptom among meth users.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
You know,
That's what I was thinking.
Not
meth.
to say one way or the other, but whenever you're talking about these kinds of things and abusive people, it stands at least a little mention that bug complaints. Although that would not explain them stopping.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. So the whole time I'm like, is the guy on meth and not telling her?
Right.
And then all of a sudden they stop, and I'm like, well, maybe not.
Yeah.
So, and that's where my point is if you are, I don't know what your relationship is with Lucifer or anything like, or
Relation, okay.
well, so when you work with entities, it's a relationship, and it's usually one of a worshiping sort of status. I don't mean in the relationship sense of like a romantic sort of relationship or even a platonic relationship. You don't really become friends with your deities, but I don't know if he's maybe like one of your patron deities or something like that. So I'd love to hear.
Well, it lives in that realm. We had talked earlier about guardian demons,
Right,
as well as guardian angels, and the concepting of that, because the red face is interesting, and funny that you would bring up the Insidious character, because it is born from the notion of a darkened spirited demon or dark spirit attempting to look human, to be presentable. So it's possible that you were looking upon an entity that was trying to become more presentable, that was trying to become more reasonable, because their understanding of what we see and how we react is very limited. So covering their face in red is like, well, that's what humans do, right? They paint their face. That's a part of this. Because a lot of people don't know this, but the creature from Insidious, in the first movie, was called the Lipstick Man, because he's actually applying lipstick to his face so that he has a more presentable. Because he's a demon, he's a cloven-hoofed monster come to wreak havoc, but in his desire to be a part of the human world, he is masking himself.
Also, if you haven't watched the new season of Black Mirror, watch the second episode. Or no, that's not the second episode.
The last episode, isn't it?
Is it?
The disco?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Watch that episode, because that's one of my favorite representations of a demon having to look like something that's not going to scare the crap out of the girl.
Right.
Right. But
and that's a big thing about spirits at all. We throw the word demon around a lot, but the truth of the matter is the other dimensional entities or other realm entities attempting to not be scary sometimes produces the scariest aspect.
it's true. And but yeah, so that would be my rationale, is that this was an entity that was sent to get you out of this relationship, and you had to come into this house almost.
Yeah, well, the fact that you had these prophetic dreams
Right.
of going through the house and being in the house, knowing what the interior looked like, seeing a hanged man in the house, which could be a tarot related situation, the hanged man,
right,
oftentimes being of the conflict that you have to get out of, you know, and the suspended part of your existence might have been the relationship was not a good relationship to be in.
Well, and it clearly sounded like it wasn't.
Well, yes.
And so, you know, and the fact that him apologizing to you was what called it off. That kind of cements
that concept.
Right. So definitely send a follow-up email, because I would love to hear one, more of your stories. Sure. And two, I would love to hear more about your work with the darker entities. But on to the next ghost mail.
Ghost mail.
This one is called My Clairvoyant Witch Mother and Her Extremely Haunted Farmhouse. And
sounds like a Fall Out Boy song.
Right? And this is from Savannah, and they sent a PDF of this. So this is very nice, with photos. Great.
Ooh.
Excellent.
Okay.
Love photos.
All right. Hello. Hello all, actually. First off, I love the podcast. Y'all are doing great. Thank you, Savannah. I appreciate it.
We're trying.
My name is Savannah. Yes, I'm aware of the irony in that. I currently live in Savannah part-time for school. I practice magic, although I'm kind of in the broom closet, as it is difficult to have my altar candles, bone and tooth collection, and entire herb garden in a dorm room. Understandable. And honestly, if you guys ever want me to do a tutorial of how to make like a cute little miniature altar, happy to do so, because you can make them in a shoebox and have a whole altar, which is great for if you're in the broom closet. But anyways, I don't want to freak out my normie sweet mates. So alas, I will settle for the store-bought herbs and simmer pots in lieu of any open flames, and opt to keep my teeth in a closed trinket box. I am no particular sensitive to spirits, but have always been surrounded by people who are my mother, grandmother, and my best friend. My mother also considers herself a witch and actively practices Wicca. She has always been extremely sensitive, but I don't think she will ever write in, so I'm doing it for her. So hold on tight, because it's a long ride. Here goes my mother's ghost mail of living in an extremely haunted house, in all caps. I will try my best to get the details correct on some of these stories, but most of it was before I was born, so I will just tell what I remember. My mom got married in 1992 when she was 19 and almost immediately moved to Missouri into an old farmhouse about 30 minutes drive out into the country. One thing you need to know about backwoods Missourians is that they're going to put in a cemetery every few miles if it's the last thing they do. Understood. I love that for them.
And being a cemetery, it is the last thing many of them do.
Well, you know, it's true. Most of them use to have churches attached, but many of the churches fell derelict and were removed. It's not uncommon for hunters to come across old burial grounds and headstones just out in the middle of the wilderness and backbrush. Anyway, the old farmhouse had a long driveway that was right next to the now churchless Hopewell Cemetery. My mother was frequently home alone with the dogs because my father was often gone for work. For a wedding present, my mother asked for the antique grandfather clock that was in a family member's home. Being as it was 1992 in rural Missouri, that family member chain smoked in the house. Being as if the clock did not run, and my mom took it to a clocksmith to see if it was fixable, who told her that the nicotine and smoke in the house for all those years completely ruined the clock's mechanisms.
Wow.
Which, I mean, that makes sense. If you've ever watched a cleaning video of a house where somebody smoked like crazy in it, it is wild, like absolutely mind-boggling how much it sticks to things. But anyways, so it would never work again. However, one night the clock chimed, which is weird. Now, this could be chalked up to the old house shifting, causing the weights in the clock to shift, or something like that. But the clock didn't just chime once. It chimed in time/rhythm more than once. This clock would chime constantly, at least once a week, if not more. In addition to the clock, every time my mom would take a shower, the bathroom air would become cold, drafty, and almost breezy. She would get extremely uneasy being alone in there without being able to see the door. So much so that she showered with the curtain half open and took our small but vicious rat terrier, Dina, with her. That's perfect. That's the best guard dog, is a little angry dog.
Yes.
And so whenever the room cooled off, Dina would start growling and her hackles would raise. My mom says that she couldn't properly shave in that house for months because she would get goosebumps that wouldn't go away. In another instance, my mom has an old printer's drawer that she displays various knickknacks in. She hung it on the wall, however, it was hanging over a table. One day, she heard a massive crash. She found the printer's drawer and everything that used to be in it lying on the floor in the middle of the room. The drawer couldn't have easily fallen off its nail, which was angled up. Then it had to completely clear the table. Then it had to travel out and over several feet to the middle of the room. The ghost also would constantly break dishes, open cabinet doors, just cause general mischief, etc. At this point in time, my father doesn't believe my mom that all this stuff is happening because he was gone at work so often until one night they were watching TV. My mom had the TV in an armoire entertainment center. On top of that armoire, she had a row of 4 or 5 antique vinegar bottles. As my parents are sitting there watching TV, the vinegar bottles slowly slide off the top of the armoire one by one like a vending machine and fall into a bin of dog toys on the floor.
Oh my God.
This is a very strong entity. And the final big incident my mom describes as a sort of last stand, my mother had an antique bowl. The bowl flew off the end table she had it on and shattered on the floor. Once my mom had figured out what was going on in the house after moving in, she wasn't really freaked out by the ghost, but she grew more and more pissed off that as time went on because the spirit was an absolute menace. The Tom and Jerry bowl was her last straw. She loved that Tom and Jerry bowl. The second the bowl shattered, she quit what she was doing and started yelling at the house. I'll spare y'all my mother's colorful sailor-esque vocabulary, but she yelled at the spirit that she was mad. She was tired of it breaking her stuff, making messes she had to clean up, freaking the animals out, and that she wanted it to stop. My mom describes it as after she finished yelling, almost to the point of tears at the spirit, that the house was so quiet. The kind of quiet like when the power goes out and your ears sort of ring. Sure enough, nothing ever broke again. I'm sure it didn't.
Yeah.
And my mom says that she could still feel a presence, but he never broke anything again. When she talks about it today, she says that she never felt threatened, but it was more of a nagging, pestering, mischievous energy. Not evil or bad by any means, other than the bathroom making her uneasy. When they moved out of that house, the owners of the farm it sat on had it torn down. My mom recalls a beautiful willow tree in the front of the house. It sounds like the Conjuring house to me.
It really does.
Yeah. I mean, magnificent, healthy, giant, ancient, huge, gorgeous. You get the picture. My mom says that she went to visit the property not very long after they demolished the home, and the tree was very sickly and ill. She said that the energy on the land felt sorrowful and full of grief. Again, she returned and the tree was completely dead within a month of the house being torn down.
Whoa.
That's crazy. She says that the second time she went back, the atmosphere felt empty. No spirit, no energy, no house, just the dirt in the field. She thinks that the tree, the spirit, and the house were energetically connected somehow. I don't know if the cemetery has anything to do with it. However, it might as well have several family members buried there, or they have stones there. Let me repeat that. However, it might as we have several family members buried there, or they have stones there. It could also just be a spirit my mother picked up along the way, or recognized her as someone who would be able to interact with her or with it. We also had a spirit who would walk down the stairs and round the corner in our house, another farmhouse, LOL, but no crazy history in this house or the land. We would turn on the radio in the middle of the night, full volume, turn on the television and play music only my mother could hear. She said it sounded like muffled music from outside or the other room, just quiet enough she couldn't tell what song it was. My mother also receives phone calls in her dreams from my now deceased but still dearly loved uncle, who will tell her not to worry, that someone has joined him and everyone is okay.
Wow.
And then we will learn the next day that a loved one has passed. My mother also often hears our deceased corgi's nails clicking on the hardwood floor, or feel her jump onto the bed and cuddle into her legs in that hazy space in the early morning between sleep and waking. That's really cute.
Yes.
She also predicts pregnancies through dreams, and she has had several instances of sleep paralysis with a possible hat man, ? I don't know if he was wearing a hat, but bro was definitely a lurker. She just described him as a dark figure, then wouldn't go into it more. I have also included some photos of the property, the cemetery, my mother at the time. I'm not saying that they were inspired by my mother to cast Nicole Kidman in Practical Magic, but they definitely were. And a photo of Sweet Dina. I tried to find some old pictures of the farmhouse itself, but they seem to have been lost to time. I'll see if I can hunt some down somewhere. Anyway, there's a way too long synopsis on my mother, who I am thinking might be some sort of clairvoyant. Sounds like your mother has like a mod podge of different clair abilities, but would love to hear you guys' thoughts on her experiences and abilities. Specifically, the situation with the tree. I think I just need to write her biography at this point. LOL.
I was going to say that.
Seriously.
She's a great writer.
Yeah, seriously. Thanks for everything you guys do. Love the pod, Savannah. And so here is a map of the area where the house would have been. And if you're watching on YouTube, we'll insert all these photos as well. But here's where the general house would have been. There's the cemetery. They're right next to a creek, which doesn't help the the spiritual activity, especially being right next to a cemetery. But this is where the old church area would have been, so it would have been on that side. And then you're so right. Your mom does kind of look like Nicole Kidman in Practical Magic with the long red hair. And then there's one image of a map where it just says it's literally in the middle of nowhere. And then the puppy, the rat terrier, Dina.
The protector.
Yes. And then we have some photos at the cemetery as well. Super cool story. Gosh, the tree thing is hard to wrap my head around.
Well, so willow trees, famously ground zero for supernatural activity. Spirits can be trapped in willow trees. Spirits can be drawn to willow trees. In fact, in some cultures, they will use the branches of a willow tree to perform exorcisms. So a willow tree is a ground zero supernatural tree to start with. And then when you compound the interest, willow trees are the strange source of the word Wicca that we use, because it's from wicker,
Right.
and the wicker was made from willow trees. So the weaving and the actual act of binding things. So it's not unheard of that properties that have a willow tree on them are woefully haunted, because some people believe that the tree itself is harboring spirits or holding spirits. There's a lot of ways to go about that, but that is certainly one folklore belief behind like the significance of a willow tree, especially one that dies after the house has been demolished, because it could have had a symbiotic relationship with the spirits of the house. And when the house is gone, the identity of spirits oftentimes goes up into question. because even spirits that have lost all identity otherwise, they still are like, this is my house, this is my property, these walls are the walls that I've always known. And so even in remodeling, when you change it, spirits can start to flare up because you're changing their identity. Their identity is a part of the real estate and the landscape. So when you change those things, spirits flare up oftentimes and then almost immediately dissipate or become something else or become some other identifiable thing.
Yeah, that was the logic I was kind of on the path with, which it sounded like everything was interconnected.
Yeah.
And when you take one away, it's like taking one of these swords and just stabbing it through the heart of a spirit, pretty much. Right. Because, it's hard for a spirit to exist without an attachment.
Yeah.
Or
at least to identify itself.
Exactly.
Without an attachment.
And so it makes sense that your mom, when she came back to the property, felt that it was empty, because more than likely what happened is once those spirits had been ripped apart of their attachment, they just cease to exist in this plane, at least.
And her activity may have been a big part of their ability.
Right.
The fact that she could hear, see, or sense them gave them new energy, gave them, so it's a perfect storm, really. If you have a place that has spirits that are kind of functioning on their own, but then somebody can see them, somebody can interact with them, they kick up, and they will do as much as they can to be noticed, to make themselves known. So yeah, there's a lot of great, like, classic haunting situations going on there.
Well, and also your mom is a practicing Wiccan, so if we're going off the basis of the willow tree possibly being the root of Wicca,
right, or at least a part of the
right.
lore.
There could be that interconnection too, and I mean the basis of Wicca in general is very nature based as well. So, when you're communing with the land spirits and you're communing with the elements and things like that, it makes sense that your mom would be the lightning bolt for all the activity. And then her leaving, that also is going to drastically take it down, But thank you guys so much for sending in your ghost mail. This was a lovely way to end out the season.
Absolutely.
Super cool stories. Y'all are great writers, and honestly, you should be writing books on these stories because they're really cool. But thank you guys again. My name is Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Soucy.
And we'll see you in the next season, so stay spooky, y'all.